So, my name is Kerry Fleming. I'm the head of the dyesub sig here. I've been doing dyesub myself since 2008 when I went to a trade show not too long after I bought my first laser engraver, and everything I saw was color. It was like, okay, how do I do color? And it turned out it was dyesublimation, and it was just starting to really get hot on the market back then, at least at the desktop level, what they call anything that's not huge 44-inch printers and above is considered desktop printing for sublimation. And honestly, the reason we have desktop version of sublimation is because of cell phone cases. Companies wanted to be able to produce one-offs and do personalization, and so they went to the companies who were making sublimation printers and said, we don't need 44 inches, we need something that's, you know, this big. And they adapted, at that time, inkjet printers, mainly Epson inkjet printers. And the reason for that was because Epson didn't use heat to produce their ink droplets when they were printing things, because sublimation ink is heat sensitive. Because part of the process is heating it up so it turns into a gas to bond with polymers. So Epson was the only one on the market at the time that didn't use heat, so they started making ink cartridges to fit Epson printers. My first sublimation printer was literally an $89 printer that had about $500 worth of ink in bags attached to it with long hoses. And the printer was pretty much a throwaway. You could go buy a new one at Office Depot at the head salon. It was that simple. I think I went through 3 of them before the Ricoh printers came out on the market, and they're actually better for sublimation because Ricoh used a gel ink. Sublimation inks tend to be thicker than inkjet inks, and so they had a tendency to clog Epson printers. If you did not use them every day, it only take about 24 to 48 hours before the ink would start drying in the tubes, and you'd have to spend a bunch of time cleaning the heads and getting it going again, and waste a lot of very expensive ink. So Ricoh came on the market when they introduced their gel printers. Sawgrass, who has the patent on sublimation inks in the US, they approached Ricoh after they realized how good things were going. They had started producing cartridges for them, and it was going really well, great durability on the printers. So Sawgrass approached Ricoh and said, hey, people are buying your printers and putting iron ink in it. You're never getting another penny out of them because they're just using iron inks. Why don't we license the printers from you, and then every time we sell our sublimation ink, y'all get a kickback. And so now we have a Sawgrass branded printer that's actually a Ricoh printer with Sawgrass badges all over it, that's been optimized, the print heads have been optimized for the slightly thicker sublimation inks. And they're very, very reliable. We are saying that we are on our second printer. The first one died about 6 months ago, something like that, but we replaced it. This printer will print anything from about, if I remember right, 4x6 I think is the smallest size. It might be 3x5. But anything from there up to 13, I think they're technically it's 13 by 22. The biggest paper I've seen anybody produce is 13 by 19. 13 by 19 goes in the bypass tray on the back. Everything else goes through the paper tray down here, which is very adjustable. Get it out. Everything in here that is green moves. So if you want to adjust the width, you push the green down and then it moves. If you're using smaller paper, they suggest you unlock it and shorten the tray, just so everything's not quite so extended. The only papers that we stock at the space are 8.5 by 14 and 11 by 17. So, and all of those would require the tray to be out. Here, there's a squeeze tab on this to slide it, to adjust it to hit the back of your paper. If you're going less than about 10 inches, you have to close this down or else this won't make contact. It only goes to, I think it's 10.5 inches. This is the smallest it'll go with it fully extended. When doing sublimation, the main things you need are a printer that can print sublimation inks like ours, the ink itself, which These 4 cartridges of ink here run about $530. The ink is the expensive part of this process. We do use special paper. You can get moderate results with regular copier paper. You get better results with paper design for sublimation. And the one we prefer around here is the made by Beaver, I think it's Beaver Papers. It's called TexPrint R or TexPrint DT. Yeah, Beaver Papers. We like it because they put a logo on the side you don't print on, so it's easy to tell which side is which. A lot of the brands just, it's slightly different color from one side to the other, and depending on your fluorescent light, sometimes it can be hard to tell which side is which. So I like this one. It's a little bit thicker than standard copier paper, but it also has a coating on it that keeps the ink from soaking into the paper, so more ink is on the surface to transfer when you then do heat it up. Pass it around so you can feel it. It's very smooth coating as well. You need software on your computer to deal with the color shift, because when the inks get heated up, they do color shift. But like I say, if it gets to 400 degrees, I change colors too, so you know I can't expect them not to. To give you an idea of the color shifts, this mug was printed from an identical transfer to this one. Now this one's starting to get a little blurry because I think I printed it in 2016. I could still transfer this today, but it's the colors have started to shift on it. But you can see, especially in the reds and the greens, how much difference there is between the colors, and that happens in the heat press. So when you print something off, you can't look at the piece of paper and say, oh, these colors are off. You have to wait till you've printed it, until you've actually pressed it onto whatever it's going onto, to tell what the final color is really going to be. And because of that, if you're trying to do color matching, you need to print samples of your colors and colors around it to find the one that matches what your final result is going to be, and put it on whatever you're going to decorate. So for example, I've got, I'm find which one it is here. One of these shirts, I think it's this one. Yeah. So this one I printed some color charts on it, so I could come along and go, oh, I want that blue, and so I know in my design software what the color code is for the blue that I want. And it might not look right when it comes out on the paper, but when it gets transferred to a shirt like this, that's what it's going to look like. The colors are translucent, shall we say, or the inks are. So I've got a similar color swatch on this shirt. I'm gonna pass it around so you can see and compare. The color of the teal shirt affects the colors of the pictures that are the things that are on there. So there's a couple where you can see like yellow to yellow, and see how much difference there is in the actual color at the end result. And in saying that, there is no white ink, because sublimation has no white ink. So if you want white, you have to start with something that is white. For example, this image here. Now, the brain is an amazing thing. It'll let us look at a picture like this and think we see white. But in actuality, there's no white in that picture, and you don't really notice the difference until you see it side by side, because this is printed on a very light violet or lavender cloth, and this one's printed on white. Pass those around, you can see, so you can compare and see how it affects it. All right. We do not have design software on this machine. It's not really set up for design. Do your design somewhere else. Bring it here to print it, because it's the only printer that can talk to this, or it's the only computer that can talk to this printer. I recommend you save your designs as a PDF, because it's very easy to make sure that it prints at the size you designed. Not worry about it getting scaled. You've got a lot more control over it. It does have Inkscape on it, but not really. You don't want to really do your design. That's another reason why it's not sitting at a table somewhere. It's on wheels, so it can be moved wherever you need to work with it. The key program that you'll need is the Sawgrass Print Manager. Let me magnify this just a little bit to make it even easier. So the Sawgrass Print Manager is what does our color matching for it, our color correction for us, controls all the settings for the printer. Typically, you will find it down in the system tray. If it's not running down here when you get ready to print, just go double click on it and it'll start up. If it does ask you, oh, looks like it's been a while since I've actually used it. If it does come up and force you to go through this thing, just agree to it, and it'll come up and ask you for the sign in. It's actually on this handout that I gave you. We've got a communal sign in for it to connect to it. I guess my profile has been erased from this machine since the last time I used it. Generally, as long as your profile stays on this machine, you won't ever have to go through this again once you logged it or have signed in. If it does bring you up to the printer settings, you can look on here. I think it says on the inks. No, actually it doesn't. We use the Sublimation UHD inks. They're the most common ones. And it might not ask anybody else now that it's all set up. Okay, so let's see. Sawgrass Print Manager is showing up down here. So now that I've started it, yeah, it's showing up down here in the system tray that it's scanning for a new print job. Don't want the edge. Let me turn off the magnifier real quick so I can see it. So once we've got the print manager running, I'm going to just fire up. Where's my Acrobat reader? Ah, there it is. Adobe Acrobat. You gotta be kidding me. So let's see. So I've got this document. If I'm ready to print it, just come up here to the print icon. The printer you want to select, let me get my magnifier. It's not the Sawgrass SG1000 that it says on here, but you want to pick the Sawgrass Print Manager, because otherwise it's not going to do color correction stuff. It's just going to send it straight to the printer. The Print Manager is a virtual print driver that does a lot of stuff to our image before it actually sends it to the Sawgrass printer. So I'll pick that and I'll go into properties. And so in the properties here, I've got on the virtual print driver folder, or print driver tab. And really the only things we're going to set in here are what size paper we're using, whether it's going to be portrait or landscape, and the pixel density. In most cases with a PDF, 300 dpi is it. So, let's see, do I have, nope, I don't even have paper loaded in here. Let me throw some paper in here real quick. And I don't think you can. Oh, it's on the front here. When you put the paper in, logo side goes up. So, now I'm just loading it backwards. Put my paper in here and adjust my tray to fit it. So I'm using letter size paper. I'm actually, in this case, because this is actually designed for legal size, I'm printing it letter size, so I'm going to shrink it. If I printed actual size, it would just chop off top and bottom. But once I click print, it's going to start the job. It's actually sitting at the print manager, and generally the print manager will pop up. I think I clicked on something so it didn't pop to the front. This is where we're actually doing all of our settings. So inside the print manager, the first tab, the materials tab, this is where we're going to tell it what we're going to be putting this on, what kind of paper, quality, and where the source. It also has an option to mirror in here, so you can design right facing, all your stuff right facing, and then the print driver will flip it for you when you're printing. So in the substrates, we have a big selection of stuff to pick from. So I'm actually going to be printing this to use on the t-shirts. So I'm going to be choosing, where did it go? Polyester, right here, right at the top. That's what I'm going to end up using. But you've got options for metal that you would use for pretty much any of the metals other than, let's see, into this so that you can see it. Here, if you want to pass those around. So what you want to do is you want to actually scallop the whole edge of yours, but I'm going to press on into this just so you can see it.
Do you need to adjust the pressure?
Yeah. But first I'm going to warm this up and get rid of some of the wrinkles. Oh, I forgot. This was on mouse pad. Okay, this will give me. Just give it 5 or 10 seconds for it to warm up here and flatten out. Okay, that's pretty good. No obvious wrinkles. We're going to be using this repositionable adhesive to hold our stuff in place. You can use heat tape when you're dealing with a shirt, but then again, you come up with another straight line thing that's adding thickness to your design that could press in, and I've found it tends to stick really well to the shirts, and sometimes you end up stretching the shirt out trying to get it off. With this repositionable adhesive, you don't want to spray it over the trash can, you want to spray it in the trash can. My wife still yells at me about the sticky spots in the front of our living room where I missed. Because this stuff, even though it's repositionable, it stays tacky forever. Now, we're going to spray just a very little bit. Doesn't need to cover this at all. I'm actually going to aim for just this edge because it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't need to hold the whole thing in place. It just needs to keep it from shifting when I open it up. And anything that I get on the image, the printed part itself, could prevent ink from getting through. So if I get globs of it in the middle of the image, you're going to see spots on my image. So I'm just going to aim for this edge. Now the first thing I do, I think it's good, is in the trash can, give it a spray just to make sure it's not clogged and we got a good mist. I'm gonna hold it down in here and I'm just gonna mist the edge, just barely getting in on it. And yeah, I got just a little bit of tacky on there. Okay, I'm going to turn this down a little bit so I get some pressure. And right up here, I'm going to set my image on there. Put my piece of blowout paper over the top of it. We will tell you with the blowout paper, especially if I'm doing something that has already got ink on it, I tend to not use it more than once because it's going to pick up ink, and the next time you use it, it's going to transfer that ink back on there. So luckily blowout paper is cheap and we can use it once and be done. Okay, actually let me give it a little more pressure. Okay, I want to make sure I press in really good into this to try to see if I can force the press line into it. One of the other sort of, oh yeah, these are good. So this gives you an idea of typical placement for transfers and things. Nothing that you have to follow, but just the standards. It also gives you good information about typical sizes of imprints.
It works for vinyl. This is a good reference for vinyl, screen printing,
any kind of decoration of a shirt or garments. This is good.
Yeah,
okay.
And then the other one has sweatshirts and stuff.
Yeah. So this is one of the sort of limitations of this is that it doesn't automatically open for you. It just screams at you until you open it yourself. So I'm going to pull this off, and you can see if you look real close, there's one of the previous images that transferred. There's another one there. So that's where it's picked up some ink off of the existing shirt. I wouldn't reuse it because it is going to transfer back over. So luckily with shirts you don't really have to deal with heat gloves because as you slide it off, the shirt's going to fall away from the image and you can grab the paper and pick it up, pull it out. So in this case, did I get press marks? Sometimes they're hard to see until the light gets it just right. Should be top and side. I see a little bit here. It's hard to see. Of course, when I want press marks, I can't get them. Oh, part of it is because it's not fully up to temperature. That's why it looks so faded. Yeah, I didn't quite get all, since it wasn't all the way up to temperature, it didn't really put them in, but at some point we'll probably see them pop up. But by scalloping the edges, you get, at times I've been able to pick up where the scalloped edge is, but the eye doesn't lock on it as much. So we'll try it again later. Well, we've got another 70 degrees to go. So while we're waiting on that to heat up, I'm going to show you these other presses that we've got. So this is our original press that the Space had. It's what they call this is a 8-in-1 press. It's got 8 different heat transfer or heating units. The only reason we keep it around now is because it'll do hats. It's the only press we've got that'll do hats. It's not great at hats, but it'll do hats. I don't know, to me, the heating element on it is, I can't really get it off easily to show you. It's as wide as this is by as long, but for some reason it feels like it doesn't get hot right all the way to the edge. So if you get your image too close to the edge of the heat, it'll be faded. I don't know if that's the design of because it's got one of these soft heating elements and maybe it just doesn't have heat all the way to the edge. The way it works, let's see, yeah, it's plugged in, okay. It's got a switch on the side, turn it on, and it'll go through a little power up cycle. So it's showing you the temperature. Let's see, it is currently set in Fahrenheit, good. With it, there are actually 4 buttons, the 4th one being change between Celsius and Fahrenheit. Please leave it on Fahrenheit, just easier, everybody can standardize on the temperatures. With it, we don't go all the way up to 400. We use a max temperature of 350 on it, but that's because when you put something in it, it spends more time under the heat. With this flat press, we got at 400 for 45 seconds, we close it down, and it's got 400 degrees for 45 seconds. With this one, again, we got what would be the plus, it's an arrow, it's arrows left and right. Mode in the middle. When we hit mode the first time, this is where we set the idle temperature for the press. So this is when nothing's being run, what temperature you want it at. Typically with this one we do 330, I believe. 330 to 350 are the temperatures we use. Oh, I'm going wrong direction. So 330, I hit the mode button again, and this is the actual pressing temperature. So 350 is what I want. It smells like this. Or this heating element is stirring. Hit mode again, and this is the dwell time. This is how long, once it gets up to 350, or up to its press temperature, how long do I want it to run? For something like a hat, generally I would do 45 seconds. So up to 45. And then mode a third time gets us back into its preheating mode. Now you'll see, it was at around 90 degrees when we turned it on. It's already up to 260 degrees. But it's only heating up about this much, as opposed to this one that's heating up 320 square inches of aluminum. That one's still at, only at 364. We're already at 280. This one will be ready to use in the next probably 2 minutes. With it, you would put your item in here, your hat in here, close this down. The pressure is adjusted. There's a screw on the back that you loosen up because this column, the whole column moves. The crank on the top. This one has a big red switch on the back that doesn't turn it all the way on, just gets power to the display out here. To actually turn it on, you actually have to hit the power button. They've got these pretty little icons on here for all these things that actually do nothing at all. You actually have to touch where the words are. So I hit the power, it comes on now. It's set to, this one only runs in Celsius, unfortunately. It's set to 190 degrees. I typically do 195. When it's running, it will get up to, I think I've seen it get up to 210 Celsius. But you can only set it as high as 200 Celsius, which is more than you need. 195 is right at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. So.
And that's the run time? Or the run Celsius?
Yes. It only has one temperature. Okay. It's like the flat press. It's got one temperature. So what it shows you when it's turned on is the temperature it's set for and the time. I'm going to change the time setting because we're actually going to run the 2 mugs that we run. The latte and the 15-ounce mug at the same time, so I'm going to change the time to 8 minutes. We're going to have 2 in there. That's a good, 6 to 7 minutes for one, and then add a minute every time you add another mug in there. If I don't touch anything else at this point, at some point I'll realize that I'm not changing anything. There it goes. It stopped blinking. It went out of setting mode. If you get into one of the setting modes and just let it sit there, it'll come out automatically. Okay, I'm going to get this up to 195. If I hit the button again, it goes out of the setting mode. Now, this I call it a heat press. It doesn't really press anything unless you're using the vacuum chamber. It has 2 heating elements. It heats from the top and the bottom. And you want them, I've never found the reason not to turn them both on. But when you hit the heating button to turn them on, you press it once and light starts blinking here. Press the second time, the second button comes on, or second blinking light comes on. Can't remember which one's top and which one's bottom, but I want them both on. So it's 1 on, 2 on, or a third press turns them off. When the heaters are turning on, the temperature that's displayed is the current temperature, not what it's going to do. When I'm ready to use something with the vacuum chamber, I'll hit the vacuum button to tell it to start the vacuum, and we'll go through that after we've done a couple mugs, because it's a lot easier to deal with this when it's cool, and I don't want to put it in there, let it get hot, and then have to pull it out and deal with it while we go to do some mugs. Once I've got everything set up, I'll hit if I put my mugs in here at this point, I close this down, I hit the timing button, that would actually start the cycle. But we're going to turn this off for right now, because we're going to deal with this flat press, then we'll do this mug press, and then we'll do that one. Actually, once we're done with this one, we'll move this and plug it in over here so that we can have both of those running at the same time. So So, okay, I'm gonna do a sample pressing on this real quick. Let me grab one of my extra images. Now that we're at temperature, I'm gonna try to put press marks in again. What do we got here? Oh yeah, we'll go right up here at the top. Okay, so we're gonna go through the whole process. I didn't do the whole process earlier when I was trying to put press marks in, so good. So I put the shirt in there, I get it situated where I'm gonna want to put my image. I'm gonna put mine here. Actually, I'll probably put it right down here so it's right in the middle of the pressure. I'm gonna take a piece of blowout paper, put it on here. I'm gonna close this and let it sit for, oh, I got too much pressure now. Give it 5 to 10 seconds just to warm up the shirt, and then I'm gonna use one of my lint rollers to make sure there's no lint on it. I'm gonna start with the cleaning piece so we can see what's on this shirt that looked clean. Oh. All right, let's see. Okay, clean lint roller. I have found that lint rollers are particular about which way they like to roll. So you just have to sort of figure it out when you pick one up, how it likes to roll. And be careful when you get to the back of the shirt because you're right at the heat element. That's usually where I burn myself during these classes, is when I'm doing the lint roller. Okay, so let's see. It's actually relatively clean this time. You can see a little bit of stuff. If you look close, there are some dark specks on there. So now I'm going to take my transfer, my spray. So I just got a little bit on the white space over here. Put it down in here. And we're gonna press this for 45 seconds. Any questions while we're waiting for this to rinse?
So I noticed there's a couple local places you can get t-shirts and stuff from too.
There are. I don't know. I've never used the ones on Harry Hines, or I haven't in years because the times I have used them, it turns out they're seconds for most part. That's why they're so cheap. I have an account with Sandmar over in Irving, and so I can get brand new shirts. These shirts, I got 5 of them for, I think it was $5.75. So.
And is that what you need a tax resale certificate for?
Yes.
So if we were doing something else like a mouse pad, we would use the heat tape, right?
For the mouse pad, I'll use heat tape. Yeah, I'll show that. Oh, and actually, you can see on this one, this page, since it got up to temperature all the way, there's several logos that you can see on that one where it picked up ink. So again, I'm sliding it off, and once it starts to fall away, I can grab the paper. Ooh, I think I saw a press mark this time. Oh yeah, I can see the rectangle. You can see a line here. So that's what you're trying to avoid, is the line around it. That's why we scallop the edges. Yeah. The line, top and bottom there. Yeah. So that's what we try to avoid. They will eventually come out after it's been washed a few times. Another thing you can do is once you pull it out, you can stretch the shirt in both directions, and it'll help it relieve it a little bit, but it doesn't go all the way away. So, all right, so what we're going to do now is each of you is going to take the shirt, dress it on the, another example is on the shirt that's passing around. It's got a little round logo on the front. This is the same thing printed on bright virulent green, and the colors shift, especially in the oranges because of the yellow behind it. Now, I will point out on the shirt and on this one, the design looks faded on one edge. That's not an artifact of sublimation. That's an artifact of the fact that this is a photograph of a picture that a friend of mine hand colored over the course of a day, and by the end of the afternoon her hand was getting tired. She wasn't pushing as hard, so it was lighter. The original picture looks exactly like what's on the shirt, and well, exactly like what's on the shirt, very similar to this one because of the color changes. So that means that because the inks are translucent, that means you can't print on dark items. No black shirts. You might be able to print black on like a red shirt or a blue shirt, but the darker the item gets, the less ink you're actually going to see because it is translucent. Also, the inks only bond with polymers, which means polyester fabrics, items that are coated with a polymer coating. Some plastics, just by virtue of the fact that they're the plastics, will take ink. The key is that they've got to be able to withstand close to 400 degrees in temperature. Some nylons can be used for sublimation, but you have to use very short dwell times and they shrink. I've got some little pop-up fans / frisbee things, and the ones that are made for sublimation, they've got a metal wire ring around the outside that you flip to fold them up. Well, the fabric is loose on those when you put it in the heat press, and when they come out, it's taut as a drum because it shrunk while it was being heated up. That also means no natural fibers, no cotton, no wool, no linen, no silk. This is printed, that same flower image, this was printed on a 50/50 shirt. It's been washed one time, and it's very faded because the ink only bonded with the polyester fibers, washed out of the cotton fibers. You will see things on the internet about sublimation on cotton. Call it sublimation on cotton. It's not really sublimation on cotton. It's sublimation onto either a film or a powder that is the polymers, and then that film or powder is bonding with the shirt. So it becomes like a heat transfer and sticks on it. The images that are on this shirt, other than the stripe down here that I don't know where it came from, all of the rest of these are sublimation. The only way to get those out of this fabric is to cut them out. The ink has become part of the shirt. With the sublimation on cotton stuff, it's still sitting on top of the fibers, and if something causes that to get hot enough, it will come back off of the garment. The other kinds of things that we have, I've shown you the mug, that actually has a clear polyester coating on it. Other kinds of things we've got, this is a hardboard that's been coated with a white coating, similar to this one. The only reason you don't see white is because I've covered it all. But like I said, if you want white, you have to start with white. This is a slate coaster that had a glossy clear coat or glossy white coat on it that we printed here in the 3D vacuum press. This is actually a cotton towel that has polyester fibers woven through it so that you have a sublimatable area. So that's why we've got just that one area. They even make these in white. I always print, when I print these, I make my design about a ½ inch larger, sublimate over it, throw it in the washer, and all the white comes out of the cotton towel around it, and all you're left with is what's on the strip. This is a fiberglass reinforced plastic, no coating at all, just polished smooth, and because of the virtue of the polymers that make up the fiberglass, it takes sublimation ink really well. Same thing here. You can find fiberglass reinforced plastic it's not as easy to find these days. It used to be all over the place. Everything that was a custom shape was made out of this stuff. They started going to aluminum that's been coated with generally white coatings for shape stuff. I think at this point the fiberglass reinforced plastic has gotten more expensive than the aluminum, so they're going with the cheaper product. This case, this is a aluminum dog tag that had a white coating on one side and a clear coating on the other side, so both sides were sublimatable. These composite poker chips. That's all they'll tell you they are. They don't tell you what they're made out of. But they actually take sublimation ink. They make these in white and black. This one's been handled for 8 years now, 6 years now. So it used to be white in the center. But they make these with white or black edges. They're great for little things. I wouldn't make a whole set of poker chips out of them because they cost about 50 cents a piece for the blanks. Again, this is another dog tag that was actually coated white on both sides, but I'm gonna pass it around for y'all to look at. You've got to be careful when you're doing double-sided metal things. So if you look at this one on the side of the wording, there's a stripe through it where my heat tape was and removed some of the ink when it got hot. The ink sublimated into the tape and came off, so you got to be careful when you're dealing with that. These little cuff bracelets are just very inexpensive aluminum that was, actually this one was, if I remember right, this was a gold coated aluminum. Can't tell from the side. That I printed.
You did that with a vacuum?
Nope. Did them on the flat press just like this, and when I was done, we got a jig over in jewelry to fold cuff bracelets, and I use that to shape them after the fact. It's a bookmark now. Put it, use the shaper on it, and you got a cuff bracelet. There's about a dime total in one of these between the metal, the ink, the paper, because of the size.
You bought the bracelet somewhere.
I bought a 12-inch by 24-inch piece of metal and cut it down on the metal shear in jewelry. Cut it down to size.
So you got that coating on it, didn't you?
Bought it with the coating on it.
One of these places on the website?
Yeah, I actually got it from JDS, is where I got it from. This is actually the same metal. Exactly, well, except this was the silver, it's got a clear coat instead of the gold coating on it. This was actually a neat one. This was about a 3 foot by 4 foot wooden piece that a member did here. Laser cut, hand painted, and then reassembled. Huge thing that she was taking to FanFest several years ago and wanted something inexpensive that she could sell people because she only had one of the $400 big pieces. So we made her, I think it was 20 of these, and the first day she sold them out at $40 a piece. This is a $2 piece of metal. $2 piece of metal and $1.25 for the paper and ink to print it. What I like about it though is it's a brushed aluminum, but you can see the wood grains going up and down. Don't pass it around. The wood grain goes up and down, the brushed aluminum goes left to right, and at times it almost looks like it's floating off the surface. That's an effect you get more with one of the brands of metals is, what's it called? Promolux, heavier duty metal. This is, I don't remember, some knockoff brand. Promolux is about 3 times as thick, has a much better coating on it, higher quality coating on it. That one has been floating around in a box here for several years at the space. You can see it's starting to chip along the edges. You don't get that with the Promolux blanks. It's become the substrate of choice for professional photographers for archival prints. They'll get them done on metal prints because it's been proven not to fade. I think it's got a life expectancy 3 times longer than the best papers they've ever had for printing prints on. So now they put them on metal prints. It doesn't have the Promolux listed in there anymore. They've updated my driver and changed it. Huh. Let's see. Oh yeah, Unisub is no longer got a listing in here anymore. Interesting. So, metal, polyester, ceramic mugs, ceramic tiles, slate. It's the first time slate's ever had its own setting. Usually you use ceramic for that. Mouse pad gets its own setting. MDF boards, tumblers. I don't know why they're saying stainless steel tumblers, but whatever. Glass, acrylic. You can do some printing on acrylic. You just have to be careful, it gets soft. So you have to be very careful in handling it. Condi Systems, so I've listed on here, makes an acrylic that actually has a sort of a, it's not a clear coating, but it's sort of a off-white coating that they put on it so that it becomes a double-sided item. You can look at the image from either front or back, but they've actually built these jigs that you can buy that when you take the image out of the, or take the item out of the heat press, you set in this jig and it sags. The warm acrylic sags and it curves it so it becomes freestanding. So they just took the fact that, yeah, the acrylic gets soft, okay, we'll use that as a design feature. Cotton, this is for any of the sublimation on cotton techniques I told you about. Heat transfer vinyls. Some of the heat transfer vinyls can handle sublimation ink. If they can handle temperatures around 350 degrees, then they'll be able to take sublimation ink. And then it's listed as Caesar white glitter, but really any glitter heat transfer vinyl, the mylar that they use to make the glitter, takes sublimation ink. So you can actually use that. The heat transfer vinyl or the glitter vinyl you can actually use to get another way to do sublimation on cotton, because you make a transfer basically that you put on the shirt then. If you pick the wrong substrate, it's not the end of the world. It's just when you pick the right one, it optimizes it or optimizes the settings, the amount of ink that you put on. When you're doing fabric, you don't need as much ink as you would for a ceramic mug or something, because I mean, honestly, a lot of the fabric is empty space between the threads. So it uses less ink because it's not going anywhere, or it's not going to adhere to anything. Okay, so I'll pick that. Your options for print quality.
Quick question on those products up there. I have to buy those already with the sublimation material on top. There's no way that I could take a stainless steel mug and put something on it to make it sublimated.
You actually, there are people that sell the coatings. I don't recommend it, honestly, because most of the equipment has been standardized for the products that are available on the market. Also, if your coating if you end up coating it yourself and you end up with any air bubbles in the coating, no ink there, because it's not coated, it's empty. I have seen people take things like, you've seen the basswood natural edge plaques that you can get at like Hobby Lobby. Knew somebody that took one of those and did 3 or 4 coats of Krylon polyacrylic on there and then sublimated onto it. And the fact that it was a polyester coating took the sublimation in. Now, when he described his process, he spent hours making those plaque blanks ready for it. So there was a lot of time investment other than, you know, honestly, mug, $1.25 is what they costed at quantity. The stainless steel mugs, ones that are already coated, generally run about $10 a piece. So it's hard to justify the time and the cost of coating something yourself, unless it's just something that's entirely unique. And if that's the case, yeah, might as well try it. I mean, your mileage may vary. I tend to stick with the stuff that I take out of the box and I press it. But then you would just pick whatever is the closest to it there. Depending on the substrate you pick, determines what options you have for print quality. With polyester fabrics, it's high speed or high quality. Notice when you have the metal, your options, okay, there you go. When you pick metal, you've also got advanced photo and ultra fine photo settings. So these give you even better quality pictures if it's coming from something other than a PDF. PDF, if you're doing ultra fine photo stuff, you bring it in as a TIFF or whatever, and there's ways to print it. And like if we went to ceramic mugs, again, we just got the high speed, high quality. Most of these are probably only going to be high speed and high quality. It's the metals are really where you get into the Promolux metals and some of those things that give you a coating that can support a higher quality print. So I'm just going to go with the polyester, and I'm actually going to go with the high speed. You've got some options for what kind of paper to pick. We're using the TexPrint R. Again, if you pick the wrong one, it's not the end of the world. It's just they've got settings that have optimized for each of the different paper types. And we only have the one tray and the bypass tray, so if you're not doing big stuff out of the back, you pick tray 1. That's the materials tray. I will tell you, if you uncheck mirror because you're doing something like a glass cutting board or the crystal where it's printed right facing, Make sure you go back when you're done and turn mirroring back on, because it has a tendency to save that setting from one time to the next, and you want to make sure most of the time what you're printing is going to want to be mirrored. So save yourself the hassle. On to the layout tab. So you've got two options in the layout tab: either preserve the layout from the designer, which when you've designed a full page of something, that's generally what you want. If I had, for example, a graphic that was just one of these Makerspace logos, I could tell it that the print manager performs the layout and tell it what size paper I'm using and what kind of spacing I want, and it can put multiple copies of it onto a piece of paper. So if I just loaded a single image, I can do that. You notice that in this case it shifted it up to the edge. That's because it's got it trimming the white space down here. If I uncheck that, then it would put it back in there. Well, oh, turn off the imposed margins. It's got, this file has white space all the way to the edge, and there's some I think it's an 1/8 inch unprintable area all the way around it. So I want to not impose the margins there. I could also tell it to show me the bleed lines. So if I did that and told it to trim the white space, it would show me, okay, this is the edge of my printable area, or my printed area is there. So typically when I design, and unless I'm designing for my 24-inch printer, I'm doing a sheet, and so I just wanted to use the same layout exactly what got sent over. The jobs tab will show you if you have multiple, you can actually load up multiple jobs and have them all sent to the printer at once. Or if you load a job in that has multiple pages, they'll show up here as separate entries. And it'll show you things, the width, the height, pixels per inch. I can actually change this and tell it, oh, I want it at 600 dpi, 600 pixels per inch. And it actually has adjusted this down to 4 1/4 inches by 5 1/2 inches. And if I tell it I want multiple copies, oh, it changed my page size too, because I was doing, because I told it to preserve the layout from the manager, or from the print manager. But this is where you can control if you want multiple copies printed. You can just come in here and tell it, yeah, just send me multiple copies. If it can fit multiple copies, adjust the pressure, because it goes up and down the column. So you get it to where you want it. Now you'll notice this whole column flexes when you push it down. That's because everything's in tight tolerances. That means it's at temperature. It's ready, it's at its idle temperature. It does that at this point. Anytime it's at or over its idle temperature, it beeps at you. It will remind you that it's on. And that it's annoying. So you would put your item in here. The other reason you loosen this in the back is because this is a swing away press. You swing it out of the way, you put your item on, you swing it back in place, then you clamp it down, and you hit the green button on the front to tell it to run. So until it does not recognize when it closes. This one, you close it, the timer starts, because it knows that it's closed. This one, you have to tell it it's closed, and at this point, it's heating up the item that's in there, and once it hits 350 degrees, then the timer's going to start counting down. So we'll let it go ahead and get up there. This mug press works the same way. Temperature settings are a little bit different. It's 350 idle, 380 run. We're actually going to use this to do some mugs tonight. This one we're just demonstrating. Like I said, the only reason we kept it is because it does that. So it hits 350 and the timer starts counting down. Now, when it gets done, it'll dispatch you a long continuous beep telling you to stop it. You have to hit the green button again to stop it, and then open it up. And you're going to turn it off. This one usually lives on the floor over by the Cricut machine in the Visual Arts room. That's where it generally lives, somewhere right around that desk. Now, let's see. The mug press, like I said, same basic principles. Just a better heating element and better, a little bit better design than that one. Yeah, same thing. Mode button the first time gets us to our idle temperature. In this case, I want it to be 350. Why is it not going above? Oh, great. My up arrow does not work. Ah, son of a bitch. Well, now it's working. Oh, it wouldn't let me go above what the operational temperature was. Okay, so now I can actually increase it, yes. It's just a safety measure. We'll let you set the idle temperature above the operation temperature. So 350 to 380. With a mug, I'm going to run 60 seconds.
Oh, that's a little bit.
Yeah, if I'm going to do like if I was going to do a 15-ounce mug, it uses the same insert as the 11-ounce mug. I'd probably go 80 seconds on that, just because it's bigger, so it needs a little more time. And then mode again gets me back out to our temperature. Now, I'm going to apologize to y'all now. I thought I had a case of mugs that I'd gotten for here. Apparently, I never ordered them. So we've got lots of fancy mugs to use tonight. We're either going to do one latte mug in the vacuum press. So every mug is a little bit different. Some of them are just one colored handle. This one is actually red but has a white patch that you sublimate on. Got a fluorescent green one. Looks like we actually have one plain white mug, but I owe all of y'all a plain white mug for future use. And we have the 115-ounce mug to choose from. Or we'll do the 15-ounce mug for their archivals. The thing is with the translucent inks, generally metals come in 3 coatings. I think there might be a couple new ones in the last year or 2, but most cases you'll find them in a white, brushed silver, which is basically a clear coat over the aluminum, or a gold colored coating over the brushed aluminum. So what I've got here is the same image printed on the 3 different kinds of metal, so you can see how the color of the metal affects, or well, how the color and the coating affects the look of the picture. There's not much color difference between the silver and the white, but there's definitely a gloss difference, and it's got a little more luster to it with the brushed silver, because you get the reflective behind it and not just the plain white. Other things we got, they make these kits for flip-flops. This is the only pair I've ever had because they came free with my printer, my first printer. And I made them just to have a sample here, and if you decide you want to make these, they make a little tool for putting the straps on, because you print them. They actually come in a foam sheet that's about 8.5 by 11 or maybe 8 by 10. And then when you print the whole thing, it's just polyester fabric glued on the top of it, basically. And when you're done, you punch them out, and then you put the straps on. If you're going to do that, buy the tool to put the straps on. Putting these straps on involved needle nose pliers, bloodshed, and a lot of cussing when I figured out I put the straps on backwards. So, they are just a sample. They will never be worn by anybody, and someday they will get thrown away. What else? Oh, this is an optic crystal that has a coating applied actually to the back of it. This is one of the few things that when you do your print, you don't reverse the image. This image is actually backwards because I printed it at the same time I printed a lot of these other samples, and I didn't even think about the fact that it was going on the crystal. But it's not a big deal when it's just a photograph. Now, when it's a job with a very low profit margin and it has wording on it, and you print it and take it off and realize everything's backwards, it becomes a big deal. Luckily, I had extras that day. This is a solid maple panel that has a clear coating on the front. This was my first test with it, and I didn't get my pressure right. That's why the middle is a little bit light colored. But this actually comes from Promolux. It uses their premium coating, and it looks exactly the same as it did the day I printed it. If you look at it closer, you can actually see the grain of the maple in behind some of the white areas. This is another hardboard product. You can see it from the back. That's had the profile cut on it, white coating, and then just press. I've got 30 of these to do this weekend, as a matter of fact, in various sizes. Those come in all kinds of sizes. Some other items that you can find out there. This is a wallet with a printable area. If you're pressing this, you would put just this part of it under the heat, because the rest of this would have a tendency to melt under the heat. So it's a little bit harder to do some of these things, just because you can't do multiples. I mean, I could do probably 50 or 60 of these at one time on the flat press. I can only do probably 1 or 2 of these at a time, because you have to hold it in place while you press it, because you can't put the whole thing under the heat. You want to make custom fishing lures? You can get blank fishing lures. This is something that you would do in the vacuum press, so that it can get into the crevice, or into the concave and then the convex side, so that you get a good coating. Aluminum garden stake, making little signs for your garden. They got these in multiple sizes. This actually might be Promolux metal. I'll sit around so you can see feel the difference in the thickness. Pretty sure that is. Promolux is actually made by a company from Kentucky called Unisub. They're sort of the 800-pound gorilla of sublimation products. They make thousands of items, and just about anybody that sells sublimation blanks sells Unisub. If they don't stock it themselves, then they drop ship it, because you just sort of have to. They've got so much so that I'll show you when we get into the printing side of things. They have their own entry in the list of what kind of things you're printing, because they're Unisub. This is just a polyester blanket that, if you can get a press big enough to do it, you could press this with whatever image you wanted. I don't recommend doing multiple pressings on things like this, because areas that end up in the press multiple times will fade, and you'll actually see where they've been pressed multiple times. I mean, you could try it. They do also make some of these that have like a border printed on them, where they've got little, different panels to press. Those you can do if you plan the order of pressing. You can get very good results with those. I helped a lady do it one time. I think hers had 12 panels, and so we pressed the middle 4 so that we didn't have to worry about things on the sides getting pressed multiple times, and then we worked our way up one side, flipped it around, worked the way the other. But it was very meticulous with okay, which direction does this picture need to go, and get it placed right, move it over there, press it, pull it out. Okay, let's move on to the next one, and just work your way through it. But the result was really cool. I mean, she had a nice gift to give someone. Not as much anymore, but for the longest time there were cell phone cases. You can get cell phone cases with either inserts, like those metal pieces that I was passing around. Those are actually, I think, iPhone 4 case inserts. It's like, yeah, nobody's got an iPhone 4 anymore. I've got a dozen of these left. Let me just use those. You don't find them quite as much anymore, because phones change so often, and every time they're, new size, new shape, and people just go, yeah, it's not worth trying to keep up with them. Okay, besides that, the other things you need to be successful with sublimation are, this is just, I believe right, this is just butcher paper, non-wax butcher paper. We use this as blowout paper to protect both ourselves from the last person to use the heat press, and the next person from us. You put this above, and in most cases, above and below your item when you've got in the heat press, because when the ink heats up, like I said, if I'm printing this is 4 inches in diameter. My graphic I'm going to have is going to be at least 4 1/4 inches in diameter, because I need to be able to see it when I put it on the paper and figure out where it needs to go. If it's exactly the right size, sure enough, I'm going to tape it down, I'm going to take it to the heat press, and somewhere in the process it's going to slip just a little bit, and I'm going to end up with a white edge on it. So I always print larger than the item I'm pressing. Because of that, you have ink that's going to actually sublimate, turn into a gas around the edges of the item. So we want to catch that on something, so we catch that with the blowout paper, but also the ink's going to sublimate back through the transfer paper to the top, so we have a piece of this on top of it to catch the other side. Also, like I said, if somebody didn't use it, their ink's going to be on the press. We want to protect our item from the last person involved. So we use this. There is a roll in Creative Arts that is actually wax butcher paper. You want to make sure you don't use that. It's actually labeled on the paper holder, not for sublimation. But you just want to be very sure that you don't feel a waxy coating, because if it's wax, it will melt onto your item. When we're doing shirts, we use lint roller, because it doesn't matter how clean the shirt work. Look, copies on one page, it will. Otherwise, it just adds pages to the print job. On the color tab, there are, in my case, for doing a shirt, I've got two options: photographic color or vivid color. Photographic color you want to use anytime you have an image that includes people, or what I call people-colored animals in a picture. You want to make sure you choose the photographic. Otherwise, skin tones will be off kilter. Skin tones will tend to go towards red a little bit. So you want to use that. If you're just doing logos or something, or like this, I'm going to pick vivid, so it's a little broader gamut of colors to use when it's printing. I can also, after I've printed something, adjust. If I print something out, press it, and go, oh, there's too much red in this image, I can come back and print it again and tell it, yeah, let's take some of that red out and print it again. And it will adjust on the fly instead of me having to go into my image and make an adjustment into my actual image. I can just adjust how it prints. So you've got cyan to red adjustment, magenta to green, yellow to blue, and then you've also got brightness, contrast, brightness, and saturation. Hit reset and go right back down. I believe if I come back over here and pick metal on the materials tab, I think I might have some other options. Oh, no. There used to be a whole lot more options in here. It looks like they've gotten rid of some of them. Oh, wait. Metal, advanced photo. Let's try that. No, looks like they've gotten rid of some of the settings in here. Yeah. That's good. That means there's only two things to choose from: vivid or photographic. I am surprised though they got rid of. They used to have a grayscale mode in here. They did a really good job of turning a color photo into a grayscale image. The other tab, all it's got on it is an option to print to file. I will warn you, if you print to file, make sure you know all you get to pick is the folder you want to put it on, and it names it with a very cryptic job number that's given to the print manager by Windows. So first thing you want to do if you print to a file is go change the name of the file so you know what it is. Because when you click it, all you get to pick is the folder that you want it to go into, and then it controls everything else. Check that. Okay, so I've got everything done that I want to do. One thing I'm going to do before we actually print this is I'm going to come down here to the print manager in the system tray. I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to go to the options and to printer utilities, and this gives me the ability to do a nozzle check. I want to make sure that all the nozzles are clean. So to do that, I'm going to use regular plain copier paper because I don't want to waste sublimation paper that I paid for to do a nozzle check. And I'm going to go to the nozzle check button. And so what we're looking for is constant lines going across. We don't want any gaps. I hit the nozzle check here. I've gotten a habit of doing it because I don't know who's used it before, especially here. Yes, and it actually needs a head cleaning. Pretty bad. I wonder how long this got turned off at some point. Pass that around. You can see in the black there's a gap in it, and half of the magenta, or maybe even 2/3 of the magenta heads are missing. So at this point, I'm going to go do a head cleaning. And I'm going to do both heads. You can tell it just to do the black and cyan head or the magenta and yellow head. In this case, I need both of them clean. So I'm going to do a cleaning. And it'll take just a minute to do that. And when it's done, it'll tell me it's done, and I'll go do another nozzle check. That's one thing I want to ask you to do. If you're ever in the space and you see the printer turned off, if you don't see this blue light on, please turn it on, unless there's a sign on it saying don't turn it on for some reason. Because that allows it to keep the nozzles clean. Its maintenance process uses very, very little ink. So it's better to just leave it on and let it keep it clean than do what it's doing right now. So the head cleaning, it's using a not insignificant amount of ink to clean the heads. So let's see, it's still not maintenance in process still. It sublimates again and will bleed, will turn into little flowers on your shirt. I mean, you'll see little, I pressed one time, looked perfectly clean, forgot to do it, had little blue spots all over the shirt, just in the shape of the, I mean, you can see exactly the size of my heat press. And it was just little spots. Also, any threads, pet hair, anything like that's on the shirt, it's going to prevent the ink from getting to the shirt. So as soon as it gets washed, that comes off, and now you've got little streaks and voids in your image. Also, when we're doing shirts, we use repositionable adhesive. This is just to hold the transfer in place, keep it from moving, because when you open the press, the cool air rushes in, and all it wants to do is pick up your transfer, move it 1/8 of an inch over, and set it back down while the ink's still hot enough to transfer. And it will leave ghost images. With the rest of the stuff, hard goods, things like that, we use heat tape for the same purpose, to hold the transfer in place and make sure it doesn't shift on us. Of course, you'll need scissors to trim transfers. Make sure you don't use any of the fabric only scissors, because they will then become not fabric only, and who knows what might happen to you when you get caught using the fabric only scissors on paper. When we're using, I wasn't gonna say it, but when we're using the 3D vacuum press, we can actually use it to press mugs with the 11-ounce mugs up to 12 of them at a time in there, and to provide the pressure, we use wraps for that. So this, you put your transfer in, this wraps around. You would have your transfer in there, the wrap goes around it. The tongue slides through the bigger piece, and it snaps. Oops, I didn't get it lined up right. I want to make sure it extends over the top and the bottom so that it provides pressure all the way. Snaps closed. Now this is providing the pressure that a flat press would apply on a flat thing, or that our mug press would apply if we were pressing this in the mug. Then this goes in the 3D vacuum press, and it acts as just basically a convection oven at that point to heat this up. And then the combination of the heat and the pressure gives us that, what we need to get the good sublimation. The nice thing with these is they call them quick release. You can just pop the tongue and let it fall, because every piece of metal on that is about 400 degrees when it comes out. When I'm doing what I would call a production run, which is anywhere from 24 to 50 mugs, I'll have 24 of these wraps, and I'll be wrapping a batch of them while I've got a batch in the press, because it'll take 12 mugs will take about 18 to 20 minutes. So I'll get the next batch ready to go. When I pull the first one out, pop all the wraps off and let them start cooling. Load the next batch in, close it. By that time, these have cooled enough that I can handle to start doing the next batch of mugs.
What was that time again that you said?
For 12 mugs, it's like 18 to 20 minutes. On the wiki, there's more information about timing and stuff, but generally, if I remember right, it's depending on conditions, 6 to 7 minutes for one mug, and then every additional mug you put in, you add another minute onto it. You also want heat gloves, heat-resistant gloves. I prefer the elk glove style. One thing is, if these get wet, they no longer provide any sort of insulation. They become little steam ovens of their own. So you want to make sure you don't get these wet. This style isn't quite as heat resistant, but it's got a good rubber coating. It actually makes it a little bit easier when you're dealing with the 3D vacuum press to grab things. The heat will get through eventually. But these are good because of the grippiness of them. So just personal preference. I've got my own set of elk gloves that I bring with me up here, so I'm not having to share with somebody else, but these are the ones that we have here. One thing I forgot that you can also make, mouse pads. Now, mouse pads are a little bit tricky. I'll show you how we'll actually make one when we're doing it. One of the things is they don't ever seem to be quite as vibrant as you would expect them to be, and part of that is because the blanks aren't really white, they're a very light gray. It's hard to find any of them that are really a bright white. Every once in a while I can find a good bright white neoprene and basically cut my own, but the ones that you already buy, you can really see the difference just with the white paper next to it. They're really a light gray. And they take a lot longer to press than you would expect. Typical t-shirt design you can press in 45 seconds. Almost 2 minutes on these, anywhere from 110 to 120 seconds to get a good image. And part of that is because the rubber they use causes the heat to dissipate a little bit while they're pressing, so they don't stay as hot. Let's see, what else? I think I might have covered everything there. I think it's time to move to the computer. All right. Let's see. Did you want to reposition the camera so I can see one of the screens?
I might go over this, I'm going to be asking my question on those mug wraps. You were showing, of course, the shorter mug. Do we have here the taller ones for like the 20 ounce?
We have a whole bunch of 11s. We've got a number of 15 ounces. We have 17 ounce latte mugs, 12 ounce latte mugs, and we have one single 20 ounce mug. It is not a quick connect, or not a quick release. It actually, I wish I brought a 20 ounce mug. Yeah, that's a true coffee size.
That is correct.
Yeah. Not a lot of the suppliers actually stock 20 ounce mugs. There are a few. This one wraps around and it's got these little metal pieces that go over the top and bottom. You stretch it out and put them on, but it can only be done in the 3D press. All of the other sizes of mugs we can actually do in our mug press, which we've got to take out. Take that out. But yes, we do have one for the 20 ounce.
That's important to know.
Yes, yes. And if you ever can't find lint rollers, we have a whole bag of them down here in the bottom because I got them real cheap one time at Dollar Tree, I think it was. Yes, Dollar Tree. They had them on sale. It's like, I might as well buy $10 worth of them. I ended up with 20 lint rollers. Okay, let's see. Let me get this back to displaying on the